Have you ever used Zapier and thought, is pipeline stage change really the only trigger I have available for GoHighLevel? Or maybe you're looking at the drop-down menu of actions and you don't see the exact action you need for GoHighLevel inside of Zapier. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you two tricks that you can use to do anything with Zapier and GoHighLevel, even if it's not in the drop-down menu. Hi guys, my name's Ethan. I've built over 300 GoHighLevels. I train businesses every day on how to use GoHighLevel the best. And in this video, I'm going to show you what tricks up probably 9 out of 10 people when it comes to using Zapier and GoHighLevel. Alrighty, so there are two things that you need to know about Zapier. Essentially, there is going to be this one at the top, which is called a trigger. So this is what's going to start the action and hopefully connect multiple tools together. And then down here is going to be an event or an action or something that happens, inside of GoHighLevel or inside any other tool as well. And so I'm going to break down both of these because, they're basically different components. So if you go into the trigger and you go to trigger event here, you can see here that the only event that it gives you is pipeline stage changed, which is very limited. So for example, if someone were to book an appointment, you wouldn't necessarily be able to get every single booked appointment. You'd have to make like maybe a pipeline stage changed to booked appointment. And that gets a little bit messy because, hopefully it should only move once into that pipeline stage and they might book multiple appointments. I actually go over why you would not want to set up a pipeline like that in my other videos. It's like probably the number one most common mistake that I see. So you definitely don't want to do that. So we want to have more options than just pipeline stage. So what are we going to do? So the solution is that you're going to go into GoHighLevel and we're going to create an event that is going to based on anything that we want, and it's going to trigger into Zapier using something called a webhook. So let me go back over into GoHighLevel here, and I'll show you. So this is the workflow builder inside of GoHighLevel. Very, very similar. So I'm going to say Zapier test. Very, very similar to the Zap over there. There's a trigger up top, and then there's actions that move down along this. And so the action that we're going to be using is going to be called a webhook. A webhook is basically like a coding tool that can send over essentially any information that you want. So in this case, we're doing a webhook. We see that the method is post, which just means that we are sending the webhook. There is also a get action, which means that we can receive a webhook, which is what we're going to set up in Zapier. And then we're going to have a URL. And I'll explain that in just a little bit. But here we can have any trigger we want. So for example, if we wanted to say, appointment, common mistake here too, people usually put customer booked appointment, but it's actually appointment status is the correct filter here. So appointment status is, and then confirmed, right? That might be a very typical example. And then you might say in a specific calendar or something like that, right? So that is going to be our trigger. Now, what's really important to understand is that the data that gets sent over via the webhook, and again, I'll show you how the webhook works in just a little bit, but it's going to be determined by the trigger. So for example, if you make the trigger based on the appointment status, it'll send over appointment data for that specific appointment. If we send over, let's say, contact changed, and then we have a specific, field or something like that updates whenever an appointment is made, then it'll send over contact data. If we are going to be updating an opportunity, so let me just find opportunity, opportunity stage changed right here. And we say the opportunity stage has changed to, let's just do the agency example. And then pipeline stage is discovery call booked, right? If this is our trigger, then that is going to send over data related to the opportunity, not related to the appointment. So if you need things like, the appointment start date and the location and things like that, you're going to want to trigger from the appointment. If you need something related to opportunities, such as like the opportunity created date or the opportunity status, then you're going to want to trigger from an opportunity. So that's a really important step that people often overlook. One more thing I should mention is that if you have multiple triggers, for example, we were looking at opportunities and we were looking at appointments. So I'm just going to switch back to the opportunity stage has changed. And we have both of them. There is a possibility they could both trigger at the same time. Whichever one triggers first would be the one that fires. Because there's a slight delay in the time it takes to actually run a workflow, there's a situation where an appointment status is confirmed, And they also changed to a pipeline stage called demo called or something like that. If you have a workflow that works like this, use one of them. By experience, the one that triggers first is usually this appointment status is confirmed. If you're trying to put multiple triggers into a workflow, consider breaking them up into separate workflows so that you don't have that error when things happen. So basically, a appointment is triggered, it would send the webhook, and then at the same time, a pipeline stage is changed, but it won't allow the contact to go into this workflow because they're already in the workflow from this one, and this data will never be transferred. The way to fix that is you just make one trigger per workflow, so that way it doesn't interfere with each other. So in this case, I am going to go ahead and do the appointment status is confirmed. So that's just going to be any appointment. And then I'm going to use a webhook. So all I have to do is in the action, I just type in webhook. So right here. And then the method is going to be post and the URL is going to be blank. So I'm going to go back over to Zapier. So in here, instead of the trigger for Zapier being a LeadConnector connection, which is basically GoHighLevel's white label name, I am going to change that to something called webhooks. Okay. So webhooks by Zapier is a premium action. So you will need to upgrade to a paid plan in order to get this. But the thing that we're going to do is we're going to catch a webhook. So the trigger event is catching a webhook. So I just change it to catch webhook right here. I hit continue. I hit continue. It is listening and it's going to give us a webhook URL. So all I have to do is copy this URL, go back into GoHighLevel here, and then just paste this URL right here, and then go ahead and save. So essentially what's happening is when an appointment status is confirmed, so I might even label this is confirmed, it is going to send over a webhook, which is going to be catched by Zapier, and it will continue the trail and it'll actually do things. Now, this is really, really cool because you can do anything you want. I gave you 3 examples with like the appointments and things like that, but you can use any of these triggers can be used in this webhook. So it gives you like 10 times more options. I mean, honestly, like 100 times more options since there's only one option in Zapier. So it's very, very, very powerful. Okay. So that is how you do that. Now, to actually connect it, you have to do something called send over the data. So in this case, I'm going to just duplicate this and I'm going to back up. So in this case, our appointment trigger is a appointment status. Sorry, our workflow trigger is an appointment status. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to go into the calendars on the left-hand side, and I'm actually going to make a real appointment, which will send over the data. I just got to make sure that this is actually published so that it'll send the data. Okay. So in this case, I'm just going to make a random appointment. So I'm just going to do, this is an example appointment. This is all good. I'm going to do a test contact here. Just make sure that this is working. All right, so I've gone ahead and booked an appointment. So there we go. If we go over into this workflow, we should essentially see in the execution log that it did run, which it did. It sent over the webhook. That's the important part. And then we're going to go over into Zapier and we're going to just go ahead and test this trigger. And you can see here that it got the records for this particular contact, which is great. So I'm going to continue with the selected records. And now we can go ahead and do anything we want, moving forward. So depending on how you're connecting Zapier to another tool, you could use another tool. You could pick another app. You could do it inside of GoHighLevel if you wanted to, but if you were going to do that, you'd probably just want to use GoHighLevel itself. Zapier is used for connecting 2 different tools together. And that's it. That's all you have to know about this trigger. And then, okay, I'll just give you an example. So if we were to, let's say, add a task, right? And then whenever you are going to put some details in here, task title, you can get the data from the webhook. So this is all the data that was sent over from the webhook. So we might make something like, calendar name, right? And you might say like prep for call to, calendar name. And then a task description is like, maybe this is the this is the contact. And then you have a bunch of options in terms of adding the contact data, right? Due date, right? We might even have the date of the actual appointment. So let's say date. So date created, that's not right. We want to do the calendar date, maybe the calendar start time. There we go. So we would do the calendar start time, and then that would be the due date for this particular task. And so that's just an example, but obviously you can do anything you want, and you've got a whole slew of data to go through, okay? So that's step number one. That's very powerful by itself. Now that is going to be basically how to trigger anything using Zapier and GoHighLevel. And now we're going to go into how to do anything with Zapier and GoHighLevel. So let's say you're connecting a tool. It can be a webhook. It can be another tool. It doesn't really matter. But then you are going to be doing something inside of LeadConnector. So if you go to the top here, you have these specific actions, which are actually not that many actions. And some of them don't actually work as intended. So for example, add or update contact, oftentimes it'll actually make a duplicate contact, even if you don't want it to, even if it's not a setting inside of GoHighLevel. It's just a setting that Zapier will override, and you just can't do anything about it. So it gets really messy. Same thing with update opportunity. It'll sometimes just create an opportunity and completely go against the rules that you've set up inside of your pipeline, which can really mess up your dashboard and really mess up a lot of things. Add task works pretty well, actually. But the one that I want to emphasize is going to be add lead to campaign. So for example, if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to let's say I wanted to send a text message, and I want to, add them to a manual call, right? There's no option for that in this action list here inside of Zapier. And so you might think oh, there's nothing that I can do. Well, you can add to campaign. And the reason this is labeled like this is because they used to have campaigns in GoHighLevel. They no longer do. They're called workflows now, but the name just stuck. So that's what it is. It might be a little bit confusing. So if you go into your GoHighLevel account, I'm going to go back into the workflows, and I'm going to go ahead and just create a new workflow, right? So the first step of this is that you do have to create the workflow inside of GoHighLevel first. So I'm going to start from scratch. And again, I can do anything I want. I don't actually need a trigger because it actually comes from Zapier itself. So the example I gave was that I wanted to send a text message, right? So, hey there, looking forward to talking, right? And then I wanted to do a manual call. So this will basically a process for my sales team to do a manual call, right? I probably, as I've said in other videos, I separate automated versus sales processes usually, but this is just an example. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to publish this pipeline, and I'm going to call it Zapier Test 2. There we go. Okay. So now I have my workflow here, and I'm going to go back into here. And the action that I'm going to do is add lead to campaign. I'm going to hit continue. And then the campaign ID right here is where I'm going to choose the campaign that we just made. So in this particular case, it appears that I need to get the actual account set up. So let me take care of that real quick. Okay, so I've gone ahead and connected my correct account, and now when I go over into configuration, I go to campaign ID. It just means the name of the campaign. And then I do test, and I see here workflow Zapier test 2. So I go ahead and click on that, and then I can fill out all the details that I need like normal. So whenever you are adding people to a campaign, the two identifiers that GoHighLevel uses, they technically have 3, which is contact ID. Most people don't use contact ID, but most of the time you're going to have let's say a phone number and an email. And if one of those are the same as another contact, it'll merge that or update that contact, right? If the phone number and the email are both unique, it will create a completely new contact. So in this case, the full name, I'm going to select it, and we're going to get it from the webhook that we made earlier. So it'd be the full name here. Just so you know, full name does actually separate out the first name and last name. So just a little bit of a trick there. And then phone number. So we can search in here for the phone number right there, and then email as well. And so I'm going to get the email, right? And so with those 3 bits of data, I can actually just go ahead and send them over into this workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and test this step, meaning it's just going to send this over as is. So there we go. And now when I go back into the GoHighLevel, I can check the execution log and I should be able to see the text message sent off. So very good. It worked. It basically connected. And the really cool thing about this that I want to emphasize again is that with just one single Zap, you were able to potentially do a lot of different automations. So we could continue an entire automation chain from here inside of GoHighLevel. There's no additional cost for this big automation chain, whereas there would be an additional cost inside of Zapier. And that's it. If you follow those 2 steps, you can literally trigger from anything you want using Zapier, and you can also do any action you want inside of GoHighLevel. And so if you found this helpful, feel free to leave a like. If you do want any help with setting this up for your business to make sure that everything is running smoothly with your GoHighLevel, then feel free to look at the description, feel free to reach out, and I'll be sure to help you. Otherwise, best of luck and have a good day.